There, it's Lara here with your weekly Witchy Wednesday astrology forecast. And this one's for the week of October 2nd to 8th, 2019. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to click the subscribe button if this is your first time here and you'd like to see more of these videos. If what I have to say resonates with you, then that's the way to do it. You can also click the notifications, the little bell, and you'll be notified every time I put one of these videos out. And I really do appreciate, those of you who come back and engage here week after week and like the videos, share them, make a comment, share what's going on with you, ask questions, that kind of thing. Or the folks who reach out to me more privately as well. I do appreciate that. And today we're going to talk a whole lot about Pluto, because Pluto is stationing direct tomorrow, October 3rd. And this is it's flavoring the remainder of October and really, ultimately, the remainder of 2019 in many ways, because we are moving towards that Saturn-Pluto conjunction in January of 2020, right? So we're in the home stretch now as far as that goes. And we are beginning to really feel and see evidence of that momentum building. And some of us may be sitting on the edge of our seats in this sort of excited, anticipatory, maybe a little bit of nervous, anxiety, what's going to happen, how's this going to play out. And some of us may be sitting on the edge of our seats in a more kind of, biting our nails in a more fearful way, right? And being sort of really hesitant and nervous about what's to come. And I think a lot of us are somewhere in between. And I would say that describes me. A little bit of both of those things. And so, ultimately what this means and what's playing out here, it's not, the overall energy of it is not going to come as a big surprise, because this has been playing out for us for a year and a half now anyway, right? And so, like the better part of 2 years. And so we've gotten the idea here about whatever it is that is breaking down, transforming, shifting, changing, excuse me, being challenged, asking us for a lot of effort, these sorts of things. We've seen that. And so we know, we have a pretty good idea of the overall energy, but it's the specifics we're never quite sure about, right? And so that's the part that's kind of like, this is really, interesting. Let's see what's going to happen here. So we're going to talk a lot about Pluto. Pluto is, the big guy. And as it stations direct, we will feel this power surge. As individuals, in whatever area of our life, whatever area of the chart, whatever house that sits in for us. And, on the world stage, we will see that, right? Just briefly, as with any planet that's retrograde, when the planet is retrograde, there's sort of like an internalizing of that energy. And we may not see how it's working in the outside external world. In Pluto's case in particular, that energy of change and transformation and alchemy and perhaps, power struggles, obsessions, compulsions, these are all things related to Pluto. Decay and rebirth is happening on a more internal level. And as Pluto stations direct, we begin to see the evidence of these things in the external world, of the work that we've been doing internally, or the things that have been going on behind closed doors, in secret, if we're talking about maybe on a larger scale. So that's the effect that this tends to have. Pluto has been retrograde since April 24th. It stations direct tomorrow, October 3rd, at 20 degrees of Capricorn at 2:39 a.m., and that's Eastern time. So for some folks, depending on your time zone, that will be late in the evening, October 2nd. We've just had the moon in Scorpio. It just exited Scorpio and entered Sagittarius today. So that moon in Scorpio over the last few days has given us a bit of a flavor of the energy that we are moving into, because we are gradually going to be moving out of Libra season and into Scorpio season, right? The sun doesn't change signs officially until the end of the month, the 23rd, I believe. But other planets are moving in there, and then we have this influence of Pluto, who is the ruler of Scorpio, moving direct and becoming sort of more obvious. So as we shift into this Scorpio energy, it's like our descent into the underworld, like Persephone in the myth. And in the Northern Hemisphere in particular, we are moving into the autumn and eventually winter, when things are dying, decaying, retreating, and beginning that process of death and then regeneration, right? Weather's turning colder, nights are getting longer, this sort of thing. Animals prepping for, a long winter's nap, this kind of thing. And so we have that energy that's gradually building over the course of October. And in fact, the same day that Pluto stations, let me just finish up with the moon. I mentioned to you that the moon entered Sagittarius today. It will enter Capricorn on Friday and then Aquarius on Sunday, and then, shift into Pisces and eventually Aries from there. And I will speak about the full moon that's happening in Aries in next week's video. But the same day that Pluto stations direct, we have Mercury entering Scorpio. So there's another flavor of Scorpio energy. Mercury is, our mind, our communications, our thinking, messages exchanged, what we say, what we talk about, what we read, what we hear, our internal dialogue, all of these things. This is Mercury. And so with Mercury and Scorpio, our ideas and our words and our communications take on this flavor, right, of Scorpio, of depth and intensity. And so the other thing is, Mercury is going to be in Scorpio for an extended stay this time, because it goes retrograde on Halloween or Samhain at the end of the month on the 31st. And so it will have this extended period of, probing the depths and intensity in Scorpio. And then the day after Pluto stations direct on the 4th, which is Friday, Mars enters Libra. So Mars has been in Virgo for a while. Now it moves into Libra. It doesn't super love being in Libra, because Libra's a little too nice for Mars in a sense. Mars is about our ambition and our drive and our will and our passion and our assertiveness, right? Mars, the warrior planet. And moving into Libra, who's about, balance and justice and mediation and harmony and relationship and that kind of thing. Mars can have a bit of a tricky time there. So that's happening there. So just be mindful of wherever Mars is transiting your chart, which is where Libra sits, whatever house Libra is in for you. And then we've got Venus entering Scorpio as well on the 8th. So Venus, planet of love, relating, what we are attracted to and what is magnetized towards us. Planet that has to do with beauty and aesthetic and resources as well, right? Venus not only rules Libra, but also rules Taurus, the earth sign. And so this kind of brings a quality of deep relating, right? Again, Venus in Scorpio it's not satisfied with the superficial in relation to these things. It's attracted to the depths, the deeper things. And so that's Venus in Scorpio. So as I said, we're moving into this kind of, scorpionic energy. Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. Pluto works below the surface to really get to the bottom of things, to probe the depths, to purge the toxins, to expose, the hidden nasties, to prepare the ground for the eventual rebirth. So that process, to initiate the process of transformation, decay, and then eventual regeneration. Eventually bringing to light whatever is in the darkness. And, to expose that for what it is, to heal it, to destroy it, for it to be transformed in some way. Pluto is the energy of alchemy. So wherever Pluto is sitting in the chart for us, we are going through this alchemical process. And we're going to get to where Pluto is sitting for you in a little bit here, but we're going to talk more about Pluto. It's one of my favorite subjects, actually, when we're talking about astrology. Pluto, I have a lot of Pluto in my chart, so I'm acquainted with the energy, and I have to say that the older I get, the easier it is to work with, and the more familiar I am with the energy, and the more I learn about it through astrology and life experience, the easier that it is to work with, and I use that energy as more of an ally. So I'm not afraid of it, right? Of that force, of that power, like I maybe used to be. And so, speaking of power, Pluto is very related to power and control. And there are two sides to this power, energy of power, right? Just like there's always a light side and a dark side. You hear me say that all the time. A higher vibrational quality and a lower vibrational quality, right? And so when we're speaking of Pluto in relation to power, that can be on the one side the abuse of power, so wanting to control people and situations, and to maybe be kind of subjected to external dark forces, shall we say, but to lord our perceived power over others, or to think that we can get more power by taking something away from other people. So that's the one side, that's abuse of power. And the other side of Pluto energy, in relation to the power aspect, is authentic power, right? So when we are trusting ourselves versus external people, things, when we are standing in our own integrity and authenticity and not betraying ourselves, right? This is authentic power. When we are able to be vulnerable, it takes great courage and strength to be vulnerable. When we are able to connect on an intimate level with another person, and that doesn't just mean, sexually. Intimacy isn't just about that. That is authentic power. And so ultimately, that's the energy of Pluto that we optimally want to work with, right? And use as our ally. And we can see on the world stage very clearly how these power and control dynamics are playing out. Pluto was discovered in 1930. And that correlates to the invention of the atomic bomb. And so that's a good symbol here, because when we think about that, if that power is misused, it causes great catastrophe and destruction and death, right? So it's kind of a good analogy for the shadow side of Pluto energy. Pluto is also, it's the slowest moving planet. So it takes about 248 years to circle the whole zodiac. And it has an irregular orbit. So that means it doesn't spend an equal amount of time in each sign. It spends anywhere from about 13 to 30 years in each sign. And so when we have a Pluto transit, because Pluto moves so slowly, and what I mean by a transit is when our natal Pluto, so wherever Pluto was when we were born, when that is triggered by a transiting planet, right? Particularly in a difficult way, in a hard aspect, an opposition, a square, a conjunction, then like there's no way we're not feeling that. Let me put it that way. And this can last for 2 or more years, about 2 years kind of thing. It sort of depends, again, because the orbit is irregular, right? But it's felt intensely. And this is not about superficial stuff. It's not about superficial transformation. Likewise, if transiting Pluto, so where Pluto is at, Pluto's in Capricorn right now, right? About to station direct at 20 degrees. If Pluto, transiting Pluto triggers something in our personal birth chart, we're feeling it as well, right? And so that is why some folks are feeling this energy of the looming Saturn-Pluto conjunction, probably more personally than others, more strongly than others, more intensely than others. Those would be people, particularly that have a lot of energy in Capricorn, Cancer, the other cardinal signs, which are Aries and Libra. Strong Pluto signatures or Saturn signatures going on in their chart, and particularly around, the 20-degree mark. Like the actual conjunction is happening at, I think it's 22 degrees. So give or take, this is a big deal. So even give or take, like more than 5 degrees on either side of that, you're really probably feeling this quite intensely. But all of us are under this influence in some way, in some area of our chart, wherever this is happening in our personal chart. And we're going to get to that, right, in a little bit. So, but if you're having a Pluto transit around this time, particularly, like I said, a more challenging aspect, you're really feeling this. So as I said, that's not about superficial change. It's about, like, ultimately the whole process of death or decay and rebirth, regeneration, right? Alchemy in our lives in some area. The other thing about Pluto is a generational planet. Because it moves so slowly and spends a significant amount of time in each sign, we have generations of of people born with Pluto in the same sign. So for example, I am of the Pluto and Virgo generation, right near the end of it, but nevertheless. So I share that in common, that signature in common with everybody in my generation, but we don't all have it in the same sign at the same degree, and it is not having the same conversations with other planets, right, in our chart. So that's how it differs. So people that share a Pluto sign, that whole generation has what in evolutionary astrology we call an evolutionary intention, right, of that generation. So like a collective soul intention, if you will. And, I won't go into lots of detail about this. Maybe I'll do a video on this another time, but you can look that up, um, Pluto generations or whatever. You can Google that and you'll find information on that online. But generationally, right, the evolutionary intention of a particular generation is reflected in the qualities of the Pluto sign they were born under. So every kind of generation has this evolutionary intention that's specific to them. And, when you kind of look at history and the timeline, that's fairly obvious. Pluto is now in Capricorn. And it's been in Capricorn since 2008. It will remain in Capricorn until 2023. So this is the Pluto in Capricorn generation, right? And by now, and as I've already said, you know that we're moving towards this conjunction between Saturn, the Lord of Karma, and Pluto, the Lord of the Underworld, in the sign of Capricorn, the sign of the hierarchies, the structures, the establishment, governments, banks, institutions, traditions, the patriarchy, this kind of thing, right? And so the chickens are coming home to roost here, right? We have been individually and collectively experiencing a lot of fear, struggles, obstacles, transformation, regeneration, the dying off of power dynamics, intensity, obsessions, or breakdown kind of thing in whatever area of the chart this lumen conjunction is happening for us, right? So Capricorn. And obviously that's been happening in relation to those Capricorn themes on the world stage. There's no denying that at this point. But the thing is this is happening to show us that things cannot and should not remain status quo. And if we've been able to get comfortable with that notion and not resist it or fight it, then, this transit may be a little more easy to tolerate or navigate. Easy is probably a bad word because any way you slice it, I don't think it's been easy. But, we can maybe see the lessons in it and learn from it and ultimately see how in the end the ultimate purpose is to make things better, right? Like I said, it's been hard on all of us in some way. In some area of life, at least, we have been sort of having to fight for our joy, so to speak. But as we approach the end of 2019, we're powering up because we've had Jupiter turn direct in August. We've had Saturn turn direct in September. Now Pluto is turning direct in October and then Neptune in November, right? So a lot of forward momentum building towards the end of the year. Mercury, of course, will go retrograde, as I mentioned, in Scorpio, but that happens 3 or 4 times a year. This is a regular occurrence. And, that happens so we can take a step back and track our progress to date and make the necessary adjustments. So that's necessary for that to happen. But ultimately, this is really, it's a time of claiming our authentic power. It's, we're being encouraged to stop playing small, to realize the power of one, right? Of one individual, to release our fears and exercise our voices and to change if necessary or make amends for ways in which maybe we have, abused our own or misused our own power. It's really kind of a time of karmic reckoning and that has to do with Saturn. But Pluto is also associated with obsessions, compulsions, secrets, deep psychological wounding. And it's a time to face those demons, right? If we have yet to do that and to release them. A time to really accept ourselves, warts and all. And when we look at those monsters in the eye, right, and we deal with them head on, they lose their power over us. And granted, I mentioned karma. Well, some of us will have to pay the piper for past misuses and abuse of power. Some will go kicking and screaming and denying and blaming. But ultimately, and will just make every attempt to hang on. But ultimately, Pluto won't have it, right? Pluto is there, and you can't argue with Pluto. That's just the way it is. And Saturn will be there doling out the karma, right? Saturn is conjunct the south node, opposite the north node right now, and the nodes are our destiny, our collective destiny in this case. And so this is about this is about some karmic reckoning, the paying of any karmic debts, so to speak, or the reaping the rewards of our efforts, if they have been honest and honorable and integrity and all of those things. If we've been doing our best, it doesn't mean we've had to be perfect by any stretch of the imagination. No such thing as that, but doing the work kind of thing. So if we have been doing that particularly inner work, right, of reflecting on our own shadow, our depths, dealing with the skeletons in our closet kind of thing, if we've been facing the unbalanced power and control dynamics in our relationships and our lives, if we've been making an attempt at healing our deep wounds, this time can feel like a real power surge, right? And like taking back our power, standing in integrity, like I said, having authority over our own lives, and particularly in relation to whichever house this is all happening in for us. And so we're going to get to that part next. So wherever Saturn and Pluto are sitting in the chart for each of us, which is where Capricorn is, right? Particularly around 20 degrees-ish. We are going through this powerful alchemical process. So let's get on with it here and address each sign. And we've got, starting with Capricorn, of course, because Capricorn, all of this is happening in your sign. It's really interesting. I've had a lot of people over the course of this year with these strong Capricorn, Cancer, cardinal signatures in their charts. Going, what the heck is going on, and asking for readings. So Capricorn, you've been experiencing some real intensity over this last year and a half plus, and it's been a time of deep transformation and maybe power struggles. But this is really a time to assert yourself, in a very honorable and authentic way, and to take back your power and to allow that alchemical process to happen in relation to your very self, your physical body and physical vitality, to how you are perceived or present yourself. Like maybe you're really kind of stepping into your role as an authority figure in some way, Capricorn, that could be. But just maybe taking back, in another way, could be like taking back power and control over your anything that's been going on with your physical self. It could be as well. Taking back your power and standing in authentic power in relation to your life trajectory. And, again, like, I'm not one to sugarcoat. So this could potentially be about paying some karmic debts in that area as well, if that's something that is for you. You know what I mean? So, and that is for you, Capricorn. We're going to having said that, we're going to move on to Sagittarius now. So Sagittarius, Pluto's stationing direct in your second house. You've got a deep alchemical process going on in relation to your worth, your self-worth, how you value yourself, what you value, your personal values, your resources, time, money, energy, material possessions. So there are deep, deep changes happening in this area of your life. And it's a time of standing in your authentic power in relation to those second house things. And potentially a time of having some karmic reckoning happening there as well. Maybe just simply, if you've been just a real spendthrift and not watching your money, it may be a time where you really have to go, okay, this I need to take back power and control over this in my life. That's just one simple example. So that's what's happening for you, Sagittarius. And we're moving on to Scorpio now, where we've got Pluto stationing direct in your third house. So Scorpio, there has been over this last year and a half, 2 years, this deep alchemical process going on in relation to your communications, how you speak, listen, the messages exchanged back and forth, your internal dialogue, and also in relation to your immediate environment, peers, siblings, cousins, neighbors, this kind of thing, people in your community, right? And so you are ultimately stepping into your own authority optimally when it comes to these things, Scorpio, and allowing that process of transformation to happen for you. There may be some karmic debts to be paid, right, in relation to these things, but that's okay. That's okay, right? Do what needs doing there so that you can kind of wipe the slate clean and move on, if that's the case. So that's for you, Scorpio. We're going to move on to Libra now, where we've got Pluto stationing direct in your fourth house of home and family and place of living and connection to mother figures and your roots and your ancestry and your I think I said actual place of living. This could even have to do with real estate. But there is some deep alchemical process that's been going on for you over the last year and a half, 2 years, and continuing through the end of 2019 and beyond, Libra. And so this is a taking back of your power, a standing in your authentic power in relation to these things, allowing this deep transformation to happen. And potentially, making things right in this area if there is some sort of karmic, readjustments that need to happen here. So that's for you, Libra. And we're going to move on to Virgo now, where we've got Pluto stationing direct in your fifth house. So Virgo, there is a deep alchemical transformation going on in relation to what sparks joy for you and your creative output, your creative self-expression, your children or children in general, right, that you're associated with, how you have fun in life. And so, Virgo, there may have been some challenges, some obstacles, a lot of hard work in this area, but ultimately this is all for the better. There is, as I said, this deep transformation going on here, and it's time to really step into your authentic power, right? And or to rectify any imbalance of power that is happening in this area of your life, to maybe pay some karmic debts if that's what needs to happen in relation to these fifth house things. So we're going to move on to Leo now, where we have Pluto stationing direct in your sixth house, Leo. So lots of transformation going on, deep alchemical process happening in relation to your daily routine, the daily grind, your health and wellness, how you are of service. And so, there may no doubt have been some challenging times over this last while, but ultimately it's all for this process of transformation and the rebirth of something new, in a new way in this area. And so, it's time to really take control of this area of your life in a healthy, authentic way, and to potentially, if there's karmic kind of debts that need to be paid here, then that's what needs to happen as well, to get you back on track. So that's for you, Leo. And we're going to move on to Cancer, where we've got Pluto stationing direct in your seventh house of one-to-one relationships. So Cancer, those relationships that have to do with, the close personal relationships in your life. So significant other, close friends, close family members, business associates, that kind of thing. Can even have to do with rivals, that you know of. And so there is some kind of deep alchemical process going on here for you, Cancer, in relation to these things, and a reestablishing of maybe, the balance of power and the power dynamics of taking control back here of your life in some way. And potentially if there are some, karmic debts to be paid here, then it's time for that as well, so that you can, take care of that and move on. So that's for you, Cancer. Moving on to Gemini, we've got Pluto stationing direct in your 8th house, which is the house that Scorpio rules, and it's home to Pluto. So it has that flavor to it, right? This is a house of depth, of deep psychology and psychological wounding and healing. It has to do with, the resources that we share with others, money, time, energy. It has to do with our intimate connections and, our vulnerability. And so there is a deep, deep alchemical process going on here for you. And there has been over the last year and a half, 2 years kind of thing, Gemini. And it's time to now step into your own power in relation to these things, to rebalance the scales here, to be your own authority, to and potentially, kind of wipe the karmic slate clean if there are things that need to be taken care of as far as that goes as well. So I think that's what I'll say for you, Gemini. And moving on to Taurus, we have Pluto stationing direct in your 9th house. So Taurus, the 9th house has to do with our philosophy, our worldview, our belief system. Potentially it can have to do with religious kind of dogma and that kind of thing. It has to do with our teaching and learning, usually higher learning, not kind of elementary education. Teachers, gurus, foreign cultures and travel. All of these things encompass the 9th house. And so some deep transformation is happening for you, Taurus, in relation to these things. And it's time to really step into your power here and to own it, right? And if necessary, to make some readjustments, and to pay any karmic debts that you may have in relation to these 9th house matters. So, but ultimately deep alchemical process happening there in some way. So that's for you, Taurus. Moving on to Aries, we have Pluto stationing direct in your 10th house, a very public house, Aries, a house of your career, your ambitions, your worldly, your reputation out in the world, your status, your relationship to authority and your own authority, and to father figures kind of thing, and to the legacy you wish to leave. It involves that 10th house. And so there is some deep alchemical process that has been happening over this last year and a half plus for you, Aries. And it's time now to really step into your authentic power in relation to these things, and to, if necessary, to take care of any karmic debts that need to be paid in relation to this 10th house. So that's for you, Aries. We're going to move to Pisces now. Pisces, you have Pluto stationing direct in your 10th house, or sorry, your 11th house, Pisces. Your 11th house is the house of hopes and dreams for the future, of the people that walk the same path as us. So like our tribe kind of thing. It has to do with friendship groups and associations, clubs, organizations, that we're part of. And there has been, in some way, some deep transformation that has been taking place for you in this area of life. And perhaps some struggles and obstacles to overcome, and a lot of hard work. But ultimately, you're being asked now to really step into your power here, and to own it. And if necessary, to take care of any kind of, karmic debt here, to rebalance the scales in some way in this 11th house area. So that's for you, Pisces. And now, last but not least, here we've got Aquarius. Aquarius, ooh, there has been some really intense transformation and perhaps internal struggle happening for you. And Pluto is stationing direct in your 12th house, which is the house of the unseen, of the subconscious, of what goes on behind closed doors, of rest, relaxation, recuperation, our dreams, our connection to, other realms, to the divine, our self-sabotage, right? Our bad habits, that kind of thing that sabotage us. So this could be pretty intense times, but maybe things that people are not seeing on an external level, because this is a very kind of, again, behind closed doors kind of house. So deep transformation and alchemy going on here. And ultimately, Aquarius, it's time for you to own it here, right? In this area of life, to really be your own authority here, to take back power and control if you've given it away, or potentially to pay any karmic debts here, as far as this 12th house and the things that I've been talking about encompass the 12th house, and to kind of wipe the slate clean in that area of life for you, Aquarius. So powerful times. That is all 12 signs, and I hope that I've given you enough to go on in this video. I could talk about Pluto for days, and this energy. And I'd really be curious to know if you're willing to share, if you're feeling this, how you're feeling it, what your experiences are. I will see you next week in next week's video, where I think we'll be talking about the full moon in Aries. Okay? Take good care. Talk soon. Bye-bye.